Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. It is a pleasure to have you all here present at Urbanize Hub in this special Urban Talks live session. We're going to first and foremost wait for everybody to tune in because it is a Monday morning. It takes a little bit of a few minutes to get properly set into the scene. So we're going to be waiting for you guys to calmly show up and join the conversation. It is an honor to be here today with three amazing speakers to talk about the subject of sustainable cities. It's something that we will dive deep into, but there's a twist. We're gonna have this conversation in a way that probably will surprise you, but at the end of the day, we hope that it will also inspire you because all of these conversations we're having here at Urban Talks and Urbanize Hub, the point is to move ourselves towards action. This is something that we all require. So I hope in the meantime, as you're tuning in, you have your coffee, you have your tea, whatever you have as a refreshment, and you're ready to participate in this conversation. As usual, we are live on Facebook and on YouTube as well. We can all tune in through questions and participate and give our contribution, and we will make sure to include that in what is going on. As a short and quick introduction, I would like to first and foremost give a big thank you to our guests for tuning in and joining us for this conversation. First, we have Andreea Idriceanu Calev. She's tuning in from Sibiu, somewhere nice where nature is around her, and we envy her a great deal. But she will give us a great deal of insights on sustainability from, again, a twist. We're not going to spoil too much of what they have prepared for you guys. I want to keep that going. And then we have from Berlin, Rob Gierke, who he has an interesting point of view as well in terms of how we activate in ourselves in this discussion around sustainable cities. But like I said, we're going to get into that a lot later. And of course, Mr. Marc Buckley, who will be our challenger today. He will challenge our perspectives. He's going to test a little bit the way we think. So I invite you to be challenged as well and to let your mind be inspired by the setup that you will have for today's talk. One more thing, in terms of how the format will be today, we will have a contribution from each speaker. And during that time, I will also invite you to join in the comments with either questions or your own contribution and ideas. And after each and every speaker moment, we will have a free conversation starting from the comments, as well as some short debates between the speakers. And we invite you to participate because at the end of the day, we want this time to be meaningful for you as well. And we hope that together we spark a movement and we push things in the right direction, because this is what Urbanize Hub and Urban Talks aims for. First and foremost, we want to build the leaders of the cities of the future. In order to get that, to be to live in that reality, we need to understand what role we play in our community. What is it that we can do, regardless whether we're a simple citizen, a leader in a company, an entrepreneur, a freelancer, a public official. It doesn't matter if you're a parent, if you're a child, everybody can play an important role in the future of our cities. And so we invite you to play that role with us, and we hope that these conversations spark you in this direction. All right, so we seem to have around 24 people tuned in. And before we start, I would love to see whether you are, I would like to see where exactly you are tuning in from. So we have Bucharest, we have Berlin, we have Sibiu. Let us know in the comments, from what city are you tuning in this morning, so that we have an idea of how widespread our impact is. All right, so go into the comments either on Facebook or YouTube, depending on where you're listening to us, and give us a little bit of a shout out in the meantime. Okay, all right. That being said, allow me to set the stage for our first guest. Oh, just before we do that, we already have someone tuning in from Miercurachuk. That's great. We were talking about Transylvania, so Transylvania is becoming more and more well represented in this conversation. That's great. Hello, Nick. Happy to have you online. Let's see who else is properly woken up. Well, not yet. People are moving still a little bit slow, but do let us know where you're tuning in from, because we would like to know. And who knows, maybe we'll get some good case practices from you guys as well. So allow me to set the stage for our first speaker, and that is Marc Buckley. He has been working with the World Economic Forum, with the Hive Network. He's a futurist, and he's a man who I would describe in one sentence, a man who will make you think, and think a great deal. And that's something that I believe is important. This is an idea that I kind of integrated a few years ago, that sometimes before you act, think. Think, but not in the sense of just check on your impulses, but look at the bigger picture. Look at what exactly is going on and try to see beyond what is there. Try to see the forest beyond the trees, try to see the trees beyond the forest. And this way you will get to see the real big picture and what is it that you can do in order to make things better. And so for the people that are tuning in from Oradea, Vienna and Bucharest, Iași, Bucharest, and Baia Mare, allow me to set the stage for Marc Buckley and to him let you inspire you in the idea that if we want sustainable cities, we first and foremost have to think about the most important component of a city, like the cell in a body, and that is the citizen, us, how we play a role into this big scheme. So Marc, it's an honor. Good morning, and please, you have the stage.
Thank you, Alex. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to be here this morning and speak to you all. I have some great, hopeful, optimistic ideas to share with you, as well as some actions in the way you can shift the paradigm of your entire life. Many of us are finding ourselves in a predicament that is a global pandemic currently, and for a lot of us, it's new, it's terrifying, it's really an awkward situation. We've had to see things that have never been experienced before. I want you to know that we have a plan. It's going to be okay. That most people are stuck in a situation where they feel like a passenger on spaceship Earth. They are on this cruise ship that is all moving in the same direction, but they're waiting for the government, for their community, for someone to bail them out, to help them, to provide an infrastructure, to give them the support they need to live and survive. I want you to know that you are a global citizen. Doesn't matter where you're at in this planet. We all breathe the same air. We drink the same water. There is no place on this earth that we can hide from climate change, and especially from types of pandemics like this. It affects us all. And so that means you're an integral part as a crew member, as a driver on this spaceship Earth as well. You're not just sitting back being taken on the ride. I'd like you to be empowered to know that you can put your hand firmly on the steering wheel and help us guide the direction of our future. Having said that, most people are still waiting for the future to happen to them. They're waiting for the government to create an infrastructure. They're waiting for some kind of an event to occur that forces them into action or creates the future for them. You are a protagonist and a crew member in this journey. You can shape this not only with voting with your dollars, voting with your real votes, but with firm actions, which are much more important than the latter two that I mentioned. So a lot of people think, okay, well, we can vote with our dollars, we can voice our concerns. Those things currently are proving to create a huge issue for us in our world. We have right now at the center of what we call a civilization framework collapse. Everybody around the world is feeling this pressure that the systems in place are failing them. and that we need a new civilization framework or model to transition into the future. But we're waiting for those leaders, those people to create that. Wait no more. Take the action yourself. I want you to know that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, there's 17 of them. They were created in November 24th, 2015, is the world's first ever global moonshot, global action plan to 2030. It's a roadmap, a set of goals that guide us for a people planet protection plan to safely get us to the future. The reason that's important, and most people don't understand about them, is 197 countries came together for the first time ever in history. It's a historical precedent, and agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals. And then a little bit later, at COP25 in Paris, they agreed on the Paris Agreement, or the 2030 Agenda, to keep our planet below 1.5 degrees of warming. Never in our world's history has 197 countries come together and agreed upon anything. This is a roadmap, a plan. And don't be mistaken. A lot of people see the goals laid out from 1 to 17 very linear and lateral. They are all a system. They are all tied to each other. And they're not for corporations. They're not for cities. They're not for countries. They're for all of us. They're for each of us as an individual, because if we reach them, we'll have a solid infrastructure, a foundation globally to act as global citizens. So a lot of people think that the Sustainable Development Goals are nationalistic or siloed. They are not. If you look at them, in order to achieve them globally, we need new economies, new infrastructures, new digitization, a new way of living, no poverty, zero hunger, quality education. And we're not just talking in the United States, and we're not talking in China, and we're not talking in Russia. We're talking everywhere, every corner of this planet. Only if we all do it, if we all become an integral part of our symbiotic Earth and work together as global citizens. And I like this twist on word, this globalization. So the global and the local aspect, that we act locally and we fix our current problems and situations and our infrastructure where we're at, but we think on the global level. I want you to know that the people that we voted into office, whether we wanted them or not, those who are holding powers, the Trumps, the Trumpocalypses, the Bolsonaros from Brazil, the Erdogans, the Duartes, the Shays, the Putins, they are not saving us. We voted them in. Somehow they got into power. Somehow they got into office. And the decisions that they're making are not just for their nations, it's for the entire world. The decisions to let the Amazon rainforest burn is affecting us all over the entire planet. The decisions that the United States makes are affecting us all over the world. And so for us to sit back and wait for poor politicians to make good decisions, we're going to be sorely disappointed. That's why we need to become active participants, crew members on this spaceship Earth to guide it to reach those resilient, desirable futures. Now, we've had some help. The United Nations, the World Economic Forum, international organizations came together and they agreed on this roadmap and plan. That was in 2015. We're in 2020, 5 years later, and we've just started to kind of hit an exponential curve or growth on this path. And then what happened? We hit a pandemic, and now everybody's kind of like, oh no, what are we doing? So I want you to know this period in time is a great time for pause and reflection, a great time to commit yourself to be a crew member, an actor for the future that you want to see and that you want to reach. I want you to know that our current governments and structures that we have that create cities, that create urbanization, they're not working for us. They're not communicating for us. I want to give you one example of that And it's not the best example. So if you have biases towards this person, set them aside. I want to give you a bigger vision. Elon Musk doesn't just do Tesla. He does SpaceX. He does Solar City. He does the Boring Machine. He has a bank. He has an insurance company. He has a neural net. He does many, many different things, all working towards a sustainable transition. He's one of few leaders who is working to reach the future, doing actions and setting dates. He has a company, another company I didn't mention, Starlink Broadband Internet. By 2024, Starlink Broadband Internet will have one SIM card for the entire Earth that you can purchase, and anywhere you travel and go, you can have internet and communication. What that will do is be the true rising of the billions who now have access to smartphones in the palm of their hand. These businesses that are all working as an infrastructure to create the future that Elon Musk is going in, that we should go in a sustainable transition, is something that is done through businesses, entrepreneurs, creators, designers, engineers that are helping governments, that are helping international organizations to achieve the future that we want to go. And so I want you to know that if you're an entrepreneur, you're an organization, if you're someone who has a plan for the future, that you may run into some troubles when you go to approach your government. And the reason why is all those companies I just mentioned to you from Elon Musk, some have to do with energy, some have to do with business, some have to do with the oil, coal, and gas industry, some have to do with the food industry, some have to do with the space industry. They all are different ministries and organizations that don't communicate and talk to each other as one. And so what Elon did in one respect, instead of saying we need to get rid of the space industry, he went in and what we call disruption. I don't like that word very much, but he went in and he reinvented and made that NASA something that is privatization of the space race. Whether that's good or bad, he came in with new technologies, a new vision, a new fictional narrative to get us to the future. And so those are the things that we need to work with in the future. How do we get all those different political organizations, not only on a national level, but on a global level, speaking all together, functioning with emerging technologies, with digitization, true digitization, because we have not reached the digital transition. We're not in the digital era. Many people are outdated and not up to speed. How do we get there? Well, it starts with each one of us individually. Instead of going out during this time of a pandemic and hoarding toilet paper, why don't you go to Home Depot or to the Baumarkt or to the local place where you can get some construction supplies, and for 5 to 10 euros or $5 to $10, you install a bidet on your toilet. So you can clean your bum with water instead of toilet paper. Why don't you think about how to be resilient, even if you're in an apartment or shanty hut or a home, to live resilient, to live regenerative, to live self-sustaining, which is infrastructural platform thinking, to get us to the future, to start living it instead of waiting for the grocery store to deliver toilet paper or supplies, or to rely upon them for your needs, your basic resilience. One last thing, and then I'm done, and we'll go to the rest of the panel, is that the top 10 companies in the world, the most successful, the largest capital market companies in our world, they're all running what's called a platform business model. Before that, we used to call it a dynamic systems model, business model. What that is, in case you're uncertain, it's an infrastructural business model. It has to do with infrastructure, cities, and sustainability. It has to do with where does the energy come from? Where does the water come from? Where does the sustainable supply chain come from to create the goods that I make, whether they're electric vehicles, rockets, or if they're or if it's food. Where does that come from, and what are all the infrastructural needs that I do to have a complete platform, a complete infrastructure, so that no matter what, tomorrow my business will be able to employ people, will be able to give have supplies to continue working, have energy to work and continue on in the future. To sustain oneself, to be sustainable, is to go on for future generations, to have enough resources to continue making your products for the future without harming our planet or our environment. For me personally, I have family all over the world, businesses all over the world, and I will always travel. But I would love to be able to travel in a solar airplane or an electric airplane, one that doesn't damage humanity or our environment. And we need to start thinking up to speed with the emerging or exponentially growing world, and use those emerging technologies in the right way, in a secure way, so that we can reach those desirable futures that we want to go to. Thank you very much, and I hope that's touched on some mind shifts for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mark. I, for one, I can fully agree that that has been the case. And this is beautifully well said, the mind shift that we want to suggest in general with today's talk, but with everything we do, to move from being the passenger, as you said, of Spaceship Earth and become a crew member. Because as you said, we all have the power of moving things in the right direction. And the more we expect sometimes our leaders to follow, to give us what to do, or to tell us what the vision should be, in reality, they are the ones that follow us. We are the main drivers. We push things in the right direction, and then they follow through, because once they realize they can't ignore us anymore and they can't ignore the ideas we have, they have no choice but to accept the new reality. And I believe a beautiful example of what you were saying is actually an example that I've discovered last year. It's a startup in Germany called Lilium that are preparing the option of fully electric transport through a plane for 4 to 5 people, that can be done on a range of 300 kilometers. Their prototype is already up and running, and now the hard part is how to create the infrastructure, as you said, how to adapt to everything that has to do with regulation. But now the governments have no choice but, all right, we have to take you into consideration. You guys brought this game-changing technology. And so we can imagine this idea that whenever we want, we can Uber with a plane, so to say, and fly off and see the sky and know that it was all electric and we didn't leave any chemtrails behind. And this is exactly what we're talking about here. And not only that, it's the fact that while these technologies, as you mentioned, are the ones that get all the media attention, we need to take it back also to people like us. What leadership we can have. And this is one type of leadership that we're going to focus on in our conversation with Andreea, because it's not about just being the big hero that gets all the accolades. It's also about being the silent hero, the one that acts in his own little space. And here, Andreea, I'm pretty sure she'll give us an insight into who that person can be.
Hey, hello, everybody. So nice to be here. Thank you very much, Alex, for inviting me. Or in fact, for inviting us, the whole Recycling Patrol, which is a national environmental program of ecological education that we developed in Romania for the last 9 years. So regarding what Mark said, I think, and we think that for these smart cities, first of all, we have to have and to raise smart citizens. And this starts from education. Because despite of all the facts that are happening around us, despite all the digitalization and all the flying machines and all the new inventions, first of all, we have to learn and know how we can change and how we can participate and how we can commit. And first of all, I think it's very, very important to talk a little bit about responsibility. Responsibility in terms of what we can do at individual level and how can we start changing things. So for the last 8 years, we managed to create a sustainable model of education, setting some national records for e-waste collection, receiving awards, appreciation, and support from communities, from authorities, local authorities, from media, from business environment. So we became, after 9 years, a platform of excellence in promoting the good habits towards the environment. What we are doing from the beginning of 2020, and maybe you can call it a premonition, we set up a platform of excellence in environmental education. And our claim is to identify and recycle from individual level of the bad habits toward the environment. So we spent the last 2 months at home. We had a lot of time to read, to learn, to find out how can we change and how can we involve in the changes from our homes. Our program mission was to transform the kids, because this educational program was developed in kindergartens, schools, and high schools for the last 9 years. And our mission was to empower the children and the young people to become models, role models for their communities, and to change the habits and the attitudes toward environment, in order to create good manners, really good manners in how we should live in our communities, in our homes. How can we help our parents to understand why we have to make these changes, why we have to do separate collection of all categories of recyclable waste? How can we reduce the amount of generated waste, or use our biodegradable packaging, or save water, gas, and other natural resources, or save water, or reduce food waste, or use energy efficiency devices, or donate used objects that are in good shape and can be used for new purposes? Or how can we change our consumer behavior in order to encourage corporate responsibility by purchasing sustainable produced goods and services? So it's an ongoing educational process that we are striving to change the bad habits that we have and to become smart citizens for our smart cities. It's very hard. It's not easy. During the last 2 months, it was very, very difficult to work with all our teams all around the country, because all the schools are closed, and it's hard to work on ongoing projects. But we have wonderful teachers all around the countries, which were the soul of this program and are still the soul of this program. And even in these difficult times, we managed to change behaviors. We managed to change approaches about how we should be. And we are still doing this, and we are going to do this. And we have a lot of questions about how it's going to happen from September, because we don't know if the schools don't shoot the messenger, but we don't know if the schools will start in September again. So we have a lot of questions, a lot of challenges, but we are here to focus on the recycling of the bad habits towards the environment. And with all the shiny and happy people around the Urban Talks, we hope to find innovative solutions and to commit ourselves in this change, and to try to have the children and the youngsters as our leaders of opinion in changing these bad habits towards the environment. So this is all from me for now, but I'm here to talk more about what we can do.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Andreea. I believe this is one thing that you have elegantly shown to us, how important is this fine tapestry of connections that we can form between people, organizations, and initiatives. And I think for the people that are tuning in right now who have certain ideas and certain solutions, this is what we're here for, to see how we can all connect around certain common ideals and to start prototyping solutions. And I believe for whomever wants to come up with an educational initiative that will help what Andreea is doing and the recycling patrol, this is exactly what we invite you to do, because this is a great time for reset. It's a great time for reinvention. And one other thing that is important is that what changes happen now are more likely to continue later in the future. This is one thing that, for example, here in Bucharest, we're pretty excited about, so to say, is that there is one association who has promoted a project so that during the weekends, most of the city center is going to be closed off from cars, and it will be just for people and for bicycles, in the sense that we keep the social distancing. Now, our hope is that because of this, people will understand the behavior, will appreciate it, and will see how beautiful life can be in a city without cars. And so this will definitely have a bigger impact afterwards, and most people will expect it to continue, since they will get the taste of what that could be. But where did that start? It started with this initiative that has been, trust me, pounding at local authorities for years with ideas like these. And this is a great time, because as everybody is scrambling for solutions, everybody's willing to try them out. And I believe if there's one idea you want to look into, do your best to realize it. But here's the thing, and this is where I'm going to lead into Rob's talk. At the end of the day, we need to get out of our chairs, and we need to get out into a community of creators, of builders. And that requires hard work. It requires a bit of stress, a bit of frustration in trying to implement and fail and adapt, and go into the direction of really seeing what the solution is. It's easy to sit on a nice little chair on the other side of a screen and simply tell other people what to do. It's harder to take action. And yes, we can start off as easy as Marc was saying with the bidet, or as I've done myself with making sure that I have filtered water at home so that I don't consume any plastic. I have my mate every day in the morning, and I do not waste anything. Everything here is reusable, and it's a beautiful alternative to coffee. These are small things that we can all do, and I invite you. This is one thing definitely that I invite you to do after our call. Do stop a little bit and look at your habits, see where you can add the few things. But then let's take it even further. We are all active members in an organization, whether we're talking NGO or a company. And we also move that place into a better direction. Businesses have an important role in this. And the more we bring people together around initiatives, the more we create, like I said, this fine tapestry of actions. That's when we can really expect a meaningful change to happen. So allow me to once again pass the baton to Rob Gierke from Berlin, and let him introduce you into his way of seeing things.
Okay, here we go. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Alex, and also Grazian, who's probably watching this morning, for having me. Thank you, Urban Talks. Also, thank you to Andreea and for Marc to be on this panel with me this morning. And thank you to all you guys who are dialing in this morning. I think that you show this interest already signals that you're genuinely interested in making a change and searching for inspiration. So I'm working in the private sector predominantly, and I'm the founder of a consulting company called Purenessity, which stands for Purpose in Business for Dignity. Because I believe, and that's my narrative, that business should start from a very pure point. And dignity, I define as, or put it on the basis of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So what I do is I help companies transition from the old world, the old business world, which is shareholder-oriented, which is profit-oriented, to transform into the new world, which is stakeholder-oriented, which thinks holistically, which integrates the SDGs in a very profound manner, which asks the question, why do businesses actually exist? What is the role of the private sector? Private sector is one of the biggest life-shaping sectors on this planet. It has a huge power, and I want to be part of this change team, if you will. So increasingly, cities and urban areas are becoming the stage for the SDGs, or for acting out and living the SDGs. There was a UN report in 2018 which said that today already 55% of the global population live in urban areas. And that is about 4.2 billion people, and there's only a couple of regions in the world, mainly Africa and Asia, where the majority of the people still live in rural areas. Until 2050, the picture will change tremendously. There will be an exponential growth in urban population. So by 2050, UN expects close to 10 billion people on this planet, and two-thirds of which will live in these urban cities. And this urbanization will mainly take part in Africa and in these certain parts of Asia. First and foremost, China, India, and in Africa, Nigeria. So there's a huge shift in terms of population growth, but also a concentration in urban areas. And, traditionally, there's already more businesses in the city than there's in rural areas. And this trend will even more accelerate, so that you can expect 80, maybe 90% of all business operating out of cities, out of urban areas. So that's the playground to really live the SDGs and really achieve the SDGs by 2030. Talking of 2030, that's the finish line of the SDGs. That's when we know, can we put the tick in the box or can we not? Did we achieve all these 17 goals or did we not? There are some very hard facts. There are some hard targets, and they're broken down into multiple KPIs. And each and everyone, like Marc and Andreea, Alex said, all sectors play their roles. And of course, business as one of the key sectors has to go forward. That's why this decade, which we just entered, 2020 to 2030, which is not a lot of time, 10 years is not a lot of time in cosmic dimensions, was called out as the decade of action by the UN. And businesses of all sectors, of all sizes, have to get their act together and have to act out. We have to get into going. And I'm there to help business do this. It'll be interesting to see in the aftermath of the pandemic now, if there's, in certain areas, if there's a counter trend going on with deurbanization, because yes, urban areas are denser and the spread of pandemics or of diseases for that reason is happening faster in urban areas. So that remains to be seen. I'm very curious. Certain trends, there's some futurists and experts who say that's going to happen. Let's see. But I think the big mega trends still show that there'll be a massive concentration in urban areas. Sustainable development goals are a holistic and systemic framework. And at their overlap, they talk to all the different aspects which you find in the city, which is housing, which is infrastructure, which is the mix of residential, commercial, and recreational areas, the share of green areas in the city, energy, food, decent work, very important at the moment, healthcare. You look at New York, social services, education, culture, safety. I have friends a lot in Brazil and Argentina. Safety is a huge issue there with the favelas, and a huge enabler also once it's there to promote decent growth and economic growth and provide jobs. And business. Are these business models linear, old school? Are they circular? Do they really make an effort to become circular? And in that sense, I always put out a couple of warning words. You don't have to get it perfect right away, but you have to get going. Don't let get perfect in the way of getting better. So we have to lean into the solutions and continuously refine. Don't become complacent, but also don't shoot it down because it's the first step on the journey. So every journey, as you know, starts with the first step. And who's doing this? Who's gonna live out and act out and play out the SDGs? Well, it's us. It's me. It's all of you guys. It's all of us, close to 8 billion people. And therefore, reality is a verb. Yes, you heard that right. Reality is a verb. You might have heard that love is a verb, but reality is a verb as well, because we're all co-creators. We need to leave that victim consciousness. We need to leave that sense of insignificance. It's already a great gift. It's a universal gift that you're here on this planet, that you're giving this opportunity to serve, to act out, to become one member, one team player in that big collective shift. And we're literally made out of stardust. We're the universe looking at itself. And the universe, we know this from science, is constantly expanding. So we cannot be stagnating. We need to evolve individually and collectively. Because if you don't, that leads to pain. If we don't, that leads to pain. And we see a lot of pain. We also see a lot of vision. We're in between. We see vision and pain. So there's a saying which says, pain pushes you until vision pulls you. And we are like at that changeover point right now. So we feel a lot of pain, but we also have that vision. We have the SDGs. We have 2030. We have 2050. And I'm a believer that we'll make it happen. So do you know these visionaries who came up with these great quotes? Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. Or Nelson Mandela, who said, it always seems impossible until it's done. It's true. It always was deemed to be impossible until someone came and did it. Best example is the 4-minute mile. So I have a past life in the corporate world. I'm a corporate dropout. Until 4 years ago, I worked for a big global sports brand with 3 stripes, which name I will not disclose, but you get the point. And I worked in global marketing there. And there's huge or there's great analogies to sports, and the 4-minute mile is one of them. Until 1954, it was deemed that it's impossible for a human being to run a mile, which is 1.6 kilometers, under 4 minutes. And then Roger Bannister came along and did it. And since then, since that psychological barrier was removed, over 1,400 runners have done it. It became the new normal. That's the new normal, and that's that paradigm shift. And coming back to this, coming back to the business world, this is now based on sustainable business. Sustainable business based on the 17 SDGs. So the choice is yours. The choice is ours collectively. And like Marc and Andreea, I plead to you: join, act out. We're all civil, we're all on the civil sectors, we're all citizens, but we all belong to businesses, many of us, or government organizations, NGOs. Play your part in the game. Or like the poet Mary Oliver said, what is it that you plan to do with your wild, precious life? Your one wild, precious life. So that's the question you can ask yourself every morning when you look in the mirror, brush your teeth. What I do see as a positive signal is there's a raising consciousness in the business world. There's organizations and movements and legal entities which are popping up. Take the B Lab, the B Corp movement, conscious capitalism, with the 4 pillars of purpose, stakeholder, culture, and leadership. B Lab has joined forces with the UN Global Compact and has now an SDG action manager. There's the purpose economy movement, where more and more millennials and Gen Zs, and I think many of you there on the screens who are dialed in belong to these groups, we're all of us asking why I am here. What is this life for? What is my role in the bigger picture? So we look in this Maslow's pyramid beyond self-actualization. We're looking into transcendence, meaning, fulfillment, and we want to play our part there. Or Singularity University, who claims to or wants to leverage exponential technologies to solve humanity's grand challenges, SDG that is. So then the narratives, the terminologies, and the angles from these different organizations, movements, they're changing, and that's okay, because they're all also playing on the same change team. But they have one thing in common: they're all coming from a systemic approach, or call it organic approach. I think it was Alex earlier who said, like, in a healthy body, in a healthy living organism. When it is in homeostasis, which is a healthy self-regulation, all the cells of the organism simultaneously give and take just enough, the exact right level, so that the overall organism can thrive and prosper, to be healthy and happy. And there's an inherent intelligence to this. And we have to become these 8 billion cells which do exactly the same. And we have to become the cells of all life on this planet to do exactly the same. Because if you have cells which want to be dominating and which kill other cells, what's that called? Right, it's cancer. So we have a lot of healing to do in this. We have a good degree of healing to do on this planet. And a book from last year, which was written by two co-founders of the conscious capitalism movement, Raj Sisodia and Michael Gelb, is called The Healing Organizations. How can business make humanity a net positive to nature? How do we heal our relationships in communities on the basis of business? That's the central part, in which speaks entirely to the SDGs. And even the investment community now starts talking about this. Take Larry Fink, the CEO of the biggest trust fund in the world, BlackRock. BlackRock manages 7.4 trillion, I repeat this, is trillion US dollars worth of assets. And he wrote in the past 3 or 4 years, can't remember, 3 or 4 years, he wrote an open letter to CEOs appealing to them, pleading to them that they restructure their business model around a true purpose, to make a positive impact on the planet and for people. Because if not, then they will become obsolete over the next 20 years. So, and that's Larry Fink. And then for a long time, he got criticism because he didn't clean up his own portfolio. Now he did. 2020, he started doing this. He's kind of weeding out all the fossil fuel components in this entire part, which is great. It's great news. And I'd like to look at these wins as well, and these encouraging parts. So when I work with clients, I always have a starting point. I call it subline is purpose charge your business. You have to purpose charge it on the basis of the SDGs. And when we look into the demographic research, we see that millennials and Gen Zs have a strong preference for companies and brands which make that positive contribution to society and planet Earth. In terms of brand preference, purchase intent, they're willing to pay a greater brand premium for these brands, and they become ever more deliberate. So the awakening is happening, and these are already the consumers and investors of today, and the share over the next 20 years will grow even more. So companies who are not acting out in this way will become obsolete. And the Gen Z and the millennials have a zero bullshit tolerance. So they expect radical transparency. There's no bullshitting. There's no hiding anymore. There's no black boxes in the future. And in that sense, digitalization will play a great role. Think of things which create transparency: blockchain, IoT, AR, VR. Yes, maybe also AI to some degree. All of this in the convergent field creates transparency, and that's going to be expected. So companies of all sizes will be transparent, and consumers will have a choice and can make the right choice, and companies can intentionally do the right thing with their businesses. I believe in the triple P bottom line, and that's a concept coming from the B Lab, which is called People, Planet, Profit, in that order. And to figure out KPIs which fit into these three pillars, if you will. And what we also need in terms of business, corporate business, for publicly traded companies, is a system where people and planet is priced into the share price, into the stock price. Because today it's a free lunch. That's how the maximization of the old works. You press to squeeze the lemon, you maximize the money out of it to the detriment of Mother Earth and the people who work in these organizations. No, they're smart people. There's a couple proposals on the table already how you would do this. It comes to radical transparency, pricing things into a share price, and then have a holistic, valued share in this company. So it's going to be an enabler for the big businesses. Of course, then there's the medium, small-sized business, and there's the startups. What I observe from my work is it's a bottom-up revolution. The startups and the medium-sized businesses, they're pushing towards the top, towards the big global multinational corporations, and eventually this harsh system will also be cracked through new models. So it's the triple P bottom line. When I start working with CEOs and leaders, the first thing I go into them is five paradigms, which we need to agree, which is the foundation where we work from. The first one, I've been an athlete in my life, and I've been trained. If there's a winner, there's a loser. That's the old world. The new world is all stakeholders in business can win. There is that possibility. So we have to change that paradigm and put it as the foundation for the new. Consumers and clients do not care. I show in the research, here's the universities, the big strategy consultancies, which give you the numbers that there's a strong preference for companies who act out. Then there's the third one is very important: scarcity or lack of not enough. Not enough in terms of I do not have enough, I am afraid to not have enough, and underlying is I am not enough. We have to get into an abundance mindset. I am enough, there's enough for me, and there's enough for everyone else. So they like the cell, the cell takes just enough, and then it doesn't maximize. It just like is decent about the choice. So there's an abundance mindset. There's enough for everyone. If we come from enoughness, then we won't get into the fear-based hoarding, the fear-based toilet paper hoarding, whatever we're hoarding, monies, etc. So that's the shift, which I make as a foundation of that discussion. Then we need to shift from an infantile me here now, which is like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old throwing itself on the ground and say, no, I want this now. Yeah, that's infantile, right? So, but we have to come to a mature us together in the future. We have to take responsibilities for the next generations, which we in this incarnation will not know. But we still, from a time perspective, have to take this responsibility and act it out today. So it's number 4. Number 5 is business cannot afford this. Comes back to, again, to the scarcity part and lack part. Yes, we know companies who act out and do stuff and heal their the people relationships and heal Mother Earth, they're also better off in terms of profit. They have higher share prices, etc. This is not some woo-woo land, and it's not some big audacious goals. There's facts. There's cold hard facts to prove that. So that's the foundation. And then when I work with the companies, I have a 5-step process, and we start with the company purpose, and I put it on the projection platform of the SDGs. And there's certain SDGs which resonate with you stronger than others, and that's fine. And it usually comes from your life story, sometimes from your pain moments, from your insight moments. This is where you want to contribute to. And it's important to harness that in the leadership team. So when I start with working with them, where's the overlap in the leadership team? Where does the CEO have a strong preference? The second step is, how does it fit to the nature of the business? If it's a water company, maybe it's a water goal. If it's a book company, maybe it's an education goal. But that doesn't matter. I want to find a sweet spot between the personal motivation, which comes from inside out, your dharma, if you will, and the company's nature. That's a sweet spot. Then you have a really high probability, energetic charge that you act that out and you succeed in that as a company. The next one is then, well, how do you do this? This is strategy. It's like that when the systems thinking comes in. Who are our stakeholders? Where do we operate in the city? Whom do we interact with? How do we consume? What do we give? Well, is it linear? Is it circular? It's all these different things. So strategy and business model is number 2. Number 3, then, once we know what we're going to do from end to end, from input factors all the way to outputs along the value chain, core business model, what do we do precisely? And how do we know we're successful? Once we've ticked this, then we take 1 or 2 and say, okay, so how do we position this? Derive a brand narrative, derive a brand positioning out of this. What do we stand for? What do we shout out? What do we portray into the world and to this? That's number 3. Number 4 is then, of course, tell an inspirational story via the different marketing channels. The offline, online, the whole 9 yards. So that's the number 4. And number 5 is PPR reporting, triple bottom line reporting. It's like how did we do? And be radically transparent with your clients, with all stakeholders. Disclose. There's nothing to hide anymore in all areas: people, planet, and profit. So wrapping up, I think. Went on for quite some time. The global game plan is called the 17 SDGs. We have a finish line, which is not, we're basically the finish line is in sight. 10 years, not too far. And there's a convergence of exponential megatrends. Urbanization is one of them. Exponential tech is another one, also coming in with human scale tech, sharing economy, peer-to-peer lending, regional currencies, which is a blockchain-based, IoT, radical transparency. And there's a consciousness and spiritual development going on. And it's also an exponential trend, which you can observe. And yes, we see an acceleration. We see a massive shift, and we probably still see more pain and more polarization, but that shouldn't keep us from acting out in the change team we are playing in, if you will. And from that point of view, it's more important than ever to purpose-charge your business in the urban context. And with that, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rob. I think you've laid a very beautiful perspective and to-do list, so to say, for companies that want to move in this direction, which I believe is something that is incredibly valuable. And I will come back to many of the points you've mentioned, because on one side, it's exactly this idea. The SDGs provide a very simple roadmap for all of us to follow, right? It can work on the individual level of saying, which goal do I subscribe to? So for example, there's the goal of quality education. And for example, you simply make, okay, that's my mission. That's my personal mission. So I will do my best to work in that direction. And for example, 2 years ago, on my 30th birthday, I decided to help in this respect and help my former class from high school and to give them access to modern educational tools. And for example, that's a way in which that's one thing that is connected to the personal purpose, and then you do your best to manifest it. And afterwards, the business itself can also take that commitment of saying, this is about me. This is what I will contribute to. And I think there's so much space for us to go there. And funny enough, there's a lot of businesses already working on this model. Besides the example of the investor you were talking about, I've been working for 3 years now with a asset management company from Geneva. They're called Symbiotics. They have a portfolio of $2 billion, and they're all destined for impact investing. So they're working in the Middle East, they're working in Africa, they're working in Latin America, they're even working in Moldova, at our neighbors, and they're doing their best to use all of that portfolio to invest in initiatives that make a great deal of sense and that empower people. You have Kiva as a nice little thing that everybody can do to just lend $25 from time to time. You get that money back and you keep on lending it to people that need it across the world with simple initiatives that can make a difference. And this is what also Marc has been saying. The future is not where we all live, right? Digitization is not 100% here. We still have areas where people are still behind. In terms of access to internet, only 4.5 billion people were connected to the internet, according to the statistics of December last year. So that means that around 3 billion people are completely off the game. And out of those 4.5 billion, there's a big question of how many of them are digitally literate, how many of them really understand the tools that are there and use it properly, right? Because just owning the phone, yes, makes you a number in the statistic and having a SIM card, but to take that SIM card to the next level, that requires a great deal of education, right? Mm-hmm. And here is where I'm going to lead a little bit into the comments, because we have had some people very eagerly contributing with their questions. And I would start with the simplest one, because this one is something we can all build from. And it comes from Ada Lungu. And her question goes a little something like this. She mentioned, there we go. What would be 3 practical things that any one of us could do to make our cities more sustainable? And I would like to just bring a short contribution from my side, and then I would leave the stage for each and every one of you. And I would suggest that we focus as well as on personal things, but also systemic things that we can move. So one of the, let's say, the personal things that I see is looking at consumption habits, definitely. For me, plastic was the thing that I wanted to get out of the system simply because I couldn't rely on the recycling infrastructure here that much. So the best thing I could do was to eliminate that. And water was the big consumption, always having to buy bottles of water because the tap water wasn't healthy. And once making an investment in a proper filtering system, boy, I could feel the difference. There was no more stacking of plastic, and I was more relieved for that simple thing. So that's one, looking at the biggest problems of consumption that we have and taking those out. Second is about definitely transportation. How do we choose to move from place to place? That is an integral factor of every city. So this is where you ask yourself, how can I transition to a different transport model? Now, I have had, let's say, for most of my years, a distance towards having a car, mostly for the financial purposes of it not being a financially sustainable decision, but then also the health factors. Living in Amsterdam did help as well, living in a city where I could move with the bike, and not only in the city, but outside everywhere, inspired me in this direction. And then moving to Bucharest was difficult into having this mindset and this behavior, but it has to start there. And I've been using, so to say, especially this period, to bike a lot. And hopefully, as the measures will stay in place, that's the next thing to do. And third, unfortunately, I am not part of a corporation. I don't work in a big company. But if I were there, my thing that I would do is to make sure that any employees that have electric cars or that have electric scooters, and that is their means of transport, in the parking lots and in the parts that the business has, to put plugging stations. Because this way, rather than putting the pressure on, oh my God, I need to have to charge my car at home, which is going to be very difficult. How do you charge your car at home? Or I have to stop somewhere to charge my car and leave it for 30 minutes. Well, you're going to leave it at the office for at least a few hours, right? So at least give that as a employee benefit and encourage people that have this means of transport. Look, we got you covered. Don't worry. If that's where you're moving into, that's where you're going to lean into, we're going to create the frame for that. And there's a great deal of possibility, I believe, for all of us in terms of where we work, as well as for public spaces, to say, look, if this is where we leave our cars, if these are places where we come very often, encourage us in this way. And I believe that there will be openness in this regard. And we can work with that, especially if you have a group of your employees that already are in this pursuit. But you can also start with whatever is simple. And that's kind of my 2 cents. And so in the order of how we started, I'm going to give it to Marc, Andreea, and then to Rob to answer this question. What would be 3 practical things that any of us could do to make our cities more sustainable? Marc?
Thank you very much. So that is a difficult question, but one that I can definitely answer. It is first and foremost your duty to make sure you're self-sustaining, that you're not relying upon your city or community for your needs. That if you come from a place to know how you're going to be resilient, whether you live in an apartment, a home, or wherever, that you first make sure your needs are taken care of, whether you're doing water filtration, whether you have a sprout garden, whether you're doing vertical farming, whether you've reduced plastics. First, you need to get yourself in alignment. Then you have to look at your city and say, in this time of COVID, in this time of a pandemic, am I getting the feeling that my city has an infrastructure that is sustainable, has an infrastructure that is working well for everybody? Does everybody have clean water and sanitation? Do they have energy? Do they have high-speed internet? Do they have the basic needs met? So every human being on planet Earth, every global citizen has an inalienable right to resources, to life, liberty, happiness, to the basic needs to survive. And the majority of the world does not have those. In a developing country where the majority of the people live, they don't have those resources. So first of all, get yourself squared away. Make sure you're ready for anything, for a time like this. And then if you see, you have to do it. And what I'm telling you is you have to do it on an individual basis where you're at, where you live. I live in Hamburg, Germany, so they have a pretty good infrastructure. It is not good enough for the future, though. It is not enough for rising populations. It's not enough for times of pandemics, the types of things that they had to do in this time of COVID to get up to speed wasn't enough. They need more. They're not prepared for the future. So first of all, you need to see and assess that for your city. And then as you see battles that you can fight or places where you can make suggestions to help your city be sustainable, you then approach those people who are in charge. If that does not exist, then it's first based upon you being able to take care of yourself. Then you can branch out and begin to help other people. The great thing during this time for me is I've been living sustainably or in a position for many, many years. I've been living in the future, talking about the future and resilience in sustainability for well over 10 years. And I'm in a position now during this time of COVID, not only to have food and resources and the ability, but I have the ability to be in a unique situation that I can now help others who weren't prepared, who don't have it. And through my example, through teaching, through just normal interaction with them, I can show them that there's a better way. If you go to a city or a community and you don't have an idea of a better way, I guarantee you, you're not going to go anywhere. So you first have to realize, what does that future look like? And how can you help your community transition? Whether it's recycling bins, whether it's better sewage or sanitation systems, whether, whatever it is. And it could start with just the people who own your building, or the people who that if you own a home, that you do certain things to make sure your home is passive and off the grid, or has certain features in it to give you the ability not only to take care of yourself, but those around you as you get better. So I hope that's not really specifically 3, but it's really an individual process. It's that globalization. First yourself, then your community, then your cities, and then you branch out into the world.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Marc. Andreea?
Well, I think first thing that we can do is to care. Because if we don't care and we count on the authorities and we count on the fact that we pay taxes and everything has to be done in our benefit, and we just have to wait to be done, I think this is the biggest problem. Second, if you start caring, get involved. I'm talking on behalf of this educational program, and in 9 years we managed to create a national network of little collection spots in all the schools that we've been working with, in order to help the children to learn the good habit of selective collection. And that's why I'm speaking on behalf of the Romanian Recycling Association, who created this project 9 years ago, and who created a national network of services in order to collect the e-waste and to sustain the communities in order to drop off this e-waste. So if you don't get involved, you cannot wait for everything to be done for you. Then if you care and you want to get involved, get informed, because we have so many sources of information. We have so many things that can be learned. I can give you a small example of 2 young children here in Sibiu who started on their own a small workshop of recycling the plastic on their own. And they get all the plastic bottles from their friends and neighbors and family. So it can be done. And then I think that we have good ideas, we care, and we want to get involved. We have to put all our resources together, all our forces, all our knowledge, in order to start proposing to authorities, to start making projects. The local community foundations had a very, very impact during these days and during these pandemics in the big cities in Romania. I can give you another example of the biggest managers of all the festivals in Cluj that get involved, put all the resources together, and created the biggest crowdfunding project for Cluj, for the hospitals. So if you want to do something, care, get involved, get informed, and get together. This is my point of view, and let's be very clear. I'm not inviting to anarchy. I'm inviting to involve.
Exactly. There is a big difference between anarchy and involvement. And again, we're going to pass this then to Rob, because we have some other great questions follow up, and would love to give the chance to all of them. So, Rob.
Okay, so I would like to first off to comment on what Mark said earlier. So he already lives in the future, which I know because Mark's a friend of mine. And there's a saying, it's like the future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So what he does, what I do, is like helping people to also arrive in the future. So it's like not evenly distributed. To the three things which I would recommend for Ada is first of all, I'm a big bike fan. I'm a bike rider in Berlin, and the COVID pandemic has made the bike industry one of the big winners. Bike sales in Europe are a third up from last year. So look at cities like, I think Alex lived in Amsterdam. Look at Amsterdam. Look at Copenhagen. This is what I picture is an urban infrastructure where most of the transportation, personal transportation, takes place on bikes. Number two would be volunteering. Find a cause which resonates with you, which makes your heart sing, where you want to contribute to. So that can be cleanups, plastic cleanups, etc. In Berlin, I've done this a couple of times. There's this movement called plugging. It comes from Sweden, from Stockholm. It's where you run, but you take a trash bag with you and you collect trash while you run. So you do a cleanup while you exercise, which is great. Also during the COVID-19, in terms of social interaction, social volunteering, there was a lot of posters. There were platforms on apps and on the internet, on Facebook, to help the elderly with doing grocery shopping, going to the pharmacies, pick things up, the most endangered people, or somebody just needs to talk sometimes, loneliness crisis, depression, we face that as well. So volunteer, do something which strikes a chord with you, and there's a vast offer, and if you can't find anything, then start one. Start a movement, start an organization which does exactly that, what you think is the city needs. And third is, I would say, I come from private business, so I have to advocate this. Support your local or support purpose-driven businesses, and if possible, also some local purpose-driven businesses which make a difference in your local environment.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Robert. And now I'd love to pass on to more of a technical question, and I think this was mainly suggested for Mark, but I would also invite Rob and Andrea if they want to chip in for this one. So the question comes from Vlad Mihai, and he goes like this: what do you believe should be the future model for city development? Ecological sustained city or artificial intelligence sustained city? I believe the ecological sustained city are more efficient to benefit the living organism in the long term, but a combination between the two should be the most the proper solution. What is your thoughts regarding these two concepts? I, for one, don't know them exactly, but if you happen to know them, Mark or Rob or Andrea, if you want to speak specifically about them, please feel free, or any thoughts that sprung out from this question.
Sorry, I had to unmute my microphone.
Oh, no worries.
Thank you for that question, Vlad. It also, a lot of these questions aren't just so one answer or silver bullet answers them all. I believe that it is a healthy mix of both of those things. So humanity is very fallible in our unification and our way of thinking. And so we need some help to update the collective intelligence of humanity, so that we're kind of operating on the same operating system around the world. And for a city, it's my opinion to be regenerative, resilient, to create infrastructures that are off the grid and have this built-in resiliency that no matter what the climate catastrophe is tomorrow or comes in the future, whether it's because of greenhouse gas emissions or just normal natural occurring disasters in our world, that we have a way to sustain ourselves resiliently for the future. And that means that if a hurricane, if we live in a coastal area and a hurricane hits us, that we will have food and energy and resources tomorrow. What we've seen is we're beyond the limits to growth. We've put too much greenhouse gas emissions and carbon into our atmosphere, where our planet's warming, storms are increasing, the weather problems are there. So you can have the most wonderful permaculture, regenerative agriculture, regenerative city, and get hit by one day by a supercell storm, which is like a water bomb, where it just dumps millions of gallons of water into one spot and wipes out your city completely and your infrastructure, creates flooding and all sorts of other problems. That's something that doesn't get built up the very next day. And so the mixed use of, whether it's artificial intelligence or emerging technology, some kind of a trustless system that takes the fallibilities of human development in the system out of the picture, to continue that regeneration, because we went beyond the limits to growth to bring in that resilience into the structure. And so I think it's a healthy mix between the two, but I tend to always go more towards the ecological sustaining city. If you think about it, agriculture, seafood, food and beverages is 12,000 years old. It's the world's most successful, oldest, longest running economy in the world. But it's also how all cities and communities were built around food. What is food? Food is our energy source. It's not fossil fuels. It's not renewables. Food is our energy source. It's how we do everything, period. And it has the biggest effect on our planet. It's also how we built cities and communities. If you look at our urbanization in cities and communities today, all our energy source as humanity is moved outside of the city. And that's a breakdown in the infrastructure. So I think we need to bring these resilient grids and that back into the city, and have a much different type of living organism, like you mentioned it. But we need that help of emerging technologies, whether it's distributed ledger technology or decentralized autonomous organization. We need something that we don't have to first trust or have a middleman in the way to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. That's a very valid point, Mark. Thank you very much. Rob, do you have anything to add?
Sure.
I do have a beautiful question for Andreea right after this.
Thank you. No, it's I think there's two. They're both two exponential trends, and I think there's a convergence of these. So like, I also don't see them either or. So they're converging as life becoming aware of itself and shaping the way forward. There's a lot of fear around the loss of our humanness, of our uniqueness, through the perceived threat of standardization and making everything more machine-like through the machines, through AI. This is a human versus machine. I don't think it's either or. I think it's like a blend, and it should serve our uniqueness, our experience, our design and shaping capacities to shape this life on Earth. So I see a lot of upside potential for it. I talked about this radical transparency in businesses that helps with the systemic planning and acting out and implementation of businesses. So there's a huge upscale. And yes, we must ensure that we remain organic beings. You know, there's the fear of becoming cyborgs and mixed parts and the singularity, which Ray Kurzweil from Singularity University called out for 2045, when artificial intelligence bypasses us, and then we have different species. So there's different future scenarios. I don't think it's either or. I think it's a complementary, synergistic development into the future. If you look into the past, we already had a couple of mass extinctions. I think with Mark, I had this conversation a couple times. Evolution is constantly testing things out, and what works is going to be increased. What doesn't work is eliminated, So, and if you try to find a pattern since life arrived on this planet Earth until human beings came here, we're not that long on this ball called Earth. Then you can see, and you overlay and try to find common themes. Then what works is there's a certain directionality, and it's always when it leads towards more consciousness, more freedom, and more love. In a nutshell. So I hope that really then resonates with the SDGs, and if that becomes a synergistic development, then I'd be very happy to observe that and be part of that.
Can I say something real quick, Alex? So
sure.
This is to interject a little bit of humor, but it's also it's reality. I don't know how it is in Romania or Bulgaria, Bucharest, or some of the other people who are here. I live in Germany. I'm from America. Rob and I both live in Germany. If you've ever been to a government office and had to deal with the bureaucracy of German government officials, my God, I'll tell you what, that's what artificial intelligence seems like to me, because they are so robotic and so set on this narrative of what paperwork and what you have to do. There's nothing human about that interaction. So if anybody's worried or has fear of that artificial intelligence, we're already been living it in a much different type of system that's really not working for humanity. And many countries are like that. Well, whether they don't even have identification or government systems, they're just not working for us altogether. And the reason is because there's also no unified system out there for us all to take the ease and things away to make it easier for us. 51 years ago, we sent a man to the moon, and John F. Kennedy did the world's first ever global moonshot with a couple countries and a couple thousand people. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are the world's first ever global moonshot. Now, 2015 was when that came out. But I want you to know that the systems that we're currently operating on aren't working for us because they're different all over. Humanity comes in and we're worried about this artificial intelligence. We need some help to update collective intelligence so that we don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again. When we sent a man to the moon or men to the moon and brought them back safely, that was using the latest emerging technology, the latest innovation. And then when Buzz Aldrin came back with the moon rock, he had to fill out a paper, typewritten, hand-signed customs declaration to submit his moon rock. Then he had to fill out a handwritten, typed, and signed document to get his travel expense voucher for going to the moon and back to be paid. The guy just used the latest emerging technologies, went out to space safely, peed in a suit, breathed in outer space, came back safely with his two counterpartners, and now he's made to fill out a paper, typed and signed. Those two worlds aren't speaking to each other. They're not together. We need to get up to speed with our exponentially growing world and unify some of these systems, because we're wasting our time with middlemen, with papers, with government officials say, you didn't fill out your TPS report to get this subsidy or to get this help. That's not working for humanity anymore. We are a unified global world. We need to come up with some better models, and it has to be a mix between both. I mean, I don't want to see robots and this cyborg dystopian future, but we need to change that paradigm and get into the realities. So people talk about fear of AI, but the reality is I'm just more scared of a German Beamter, government official, when I go to try to get a passport or try to get some other just normal thing taken care of, because of how strict and how, oh, you didn't fill out that paper, you didn't sign, that's AI for me. I'd rather have somebody say, oh, no, that's okay. You just got to do this and it's all right. We'll make it happen. Here's a great system. Just thought I'd throw that in.
No, that's a good one. That's a really good buzzword. I'm surprised it's not too a huge buzzword, because honestly, I can relate with that a great deal. And I think here in Romania, we all feel it in our bones sometimes when we get there. Um, and now I'd like to pass this next question to Andreea specifically, because I believe you also have a little bit of an experience in this domain, or at least you can tell us how it is to communicate with parents and kids when it comes to changing behaviors. So here's a bigger challenge. This one comes from Euroland Banat. He says, how can we determine the parents and kids to leave the personal cars and use public transports, bikes, etc. when commuting, shopping, going to work or school? How can, and then afterwards is the local administration. But here I would focus on this, since you have a bit of experience with parent and children. What do you think would it take in order to suggest a change of behavior here?
Well, I think it's difficult to have a solution on the spot, because first of all, during this period, all the people are scared about the pandemics, and I don't think that people are very willing to use the public transportation. So it looks safer to use your own car. So this is going to be a little bit of the problem in order to get rid of the cars. And as Euroland Banat is asking, the mayor counts on votes of the car owners. We all are voters, not only the car owners. What I think is very important, especially it showed up during this period, that despite the focus on education, which I think is very important, and things are supposed to be done in involving some projects and some programs in order to explain the people why we can do this or why we can't do that, to come with examples, to come with facts and figures, but relevant facts and figures, not things that only scare us and only keep us at home. But what I think that, with all due respect, because I understand the panic and the pressures, what I think that all the authorities missed these days is the communication, but the communication, relevant communication, in terms of explaining people why we have to respect the law, why we have to stay at home, why we have to work from home, why this and why that. Because not only we have so many deaths, so many people who are sick, so many, there are other things behind all this information. And I think the communication should be very, very relevant for the people. In order to make them to take an action, they have to understand why they should take the action, why they should make this sacrifice, why they should change a habit. And I think that this also is a two-way communication. I think the authorities have also to recreate the trust, which it's a little bit on the question these days, and to regain respect, because we lost our respect towards authorities, towards teachers, towards, let's not say doctors these days, because now they are the heroes and they deserve this qualification. But first of all, it's a two-way communication, and the authorities have to regain respect. And of course, the schools, the teachers, and all the opinion leaders, all the influencers can help this communication in order to make people understand, because we are talking about now about social media, about influencers, about a lot of people who can change the mentalities and change attitudes in their groups. And if we start from small groups, educating, informing, communicating on real benefits that we can have on using bicycles instead of using our own cars, I think on the long run, because it's not going to happen like that, we can determine changes and changes of behaviors and changes of attitudes. But we have to be all involved, and we have to count and to spot on the opinion leaders that are supposed to change things, not only the authorities. Because let's face it, there are a lot of other things they are supposed to deal with these days. So, education, communication, and respect. This is my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I think I would give a very simple example, because this is something that some people think it's a detail, and sometimes you think no, that it has to be a bigger movement, and sometimes it can be very simple. I remember right in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a video from an influencer that I was following on how germs spread, and he made a simple exercise with the class on how there's this germ dust that you could use that shows exactly how germs work or how they would spread. You cannot see it once you put it on the hand, but then with ultra V light, you can then see how it spread. And he did the simple thing of he shook the hand of the teacher, and then the teacher would shake the hands of the children coming in, but not of all the children. And then that was just a day going by. And afterwards, he inspected how many children got infected that were not having access to the first teacher, the person who had it in the beginning, how the desks were then filled with it. And I was just, wow. Okay, now I understand why we have to wash our hands. Because then he also gave an example of how would you wash your hands, if you knew exactly how that thing works. And that video was just mind-blowing from so many different points of view. That's when I understood the real point of what we're doing. And so then, of course, it's easy to get angry with people that don't follow through on certain things. But as you said, communication is incredibly important, because it's about the relationship that we have, right? And if there is no respect, and if there is no real interest in the well-being and how that information is communicated, of course, a lot gets lost in translation, a lot gets muddled up. And of course, negative actors will take advantage of that. They will simply say, either for political purposes or for their own crazy ideas, they will take advantage of that. And of course, they will use it against us. And this is, I believe, something we do miss out on, the fact that we are all human. And that is again, a very obvious little thing, but that makes a great deal of a difference in terms of how we structure the decisions we take. And one of the decisions I believe it's important for us to have into account for the next few months, because this is going to take a lot of time. Realistically speaking, we're not going to look at a change and to coming back to the way things used to be in the next year or so. Life is going to look like this for a while. Summer might give us a little bit of calmness, but then we're going to have autumn, and we're looking into a potential another lockdown situation in most countries. This is the reality that we have to understand. And in order to get there, we need education. I've learned most of this from a proper simple, it's an article that took me about 45 minutes to properly read, but it was interactive, where you could do forecasts on data in terms of how the pandemic works, how we respond in terms of ICUs. It's an incredible amount of information, which just gives you better perspective of, okay, so what decision do I take now? At the end of the day, you don't need, after you read all of these things, you don't need a government to tell you what to do. You can figure it out for yourself. And I think that's the thing. We need to treat people in this regard. We don't have to dumb things down. Rather, we need to elevate the conversation, right? We need to bring it to the level of understanding that this is what is behind what we're doing. And this way, people can then later on make better decisions. And there are some questions here that I would just like to mention, just simply because they are things that we have already communicated a great deal. And that was the discussion about how do we convince authorities to do things? How do we convince authorities to do things on several things, from parking places, bigger streets, green space and all of that. And at the end of the day, we're sorry to say it, but it starts again with us, right? You need to have a way of forcing that administration in that direction. And there are great examples for this. The problem is that this is not a comfortable answer because it requires getting your hands dirty, right? It first requires getting hands dirty and saying, what do I stand for? What do I want to fight for? And you choose the scale. You choose how far you want to go. If it's just one one simple bike lane on one street because that's where you live, and on the other end is the school your son goes to. Start from there, and then get all the parents involved, get all the neighbors, and have everybody involved in this direction, right? You play that role, but it's your choice to play it, and then you pressure it. The Archen association that I mentioned in the beginning that came up with this idea of blocking the city center of Bucharest during weekends, that's the leadership they took on themselves, right? They decided to create that job description for themselves. They decided to put that on their agenda, and then afterwards, sure, the local institutions had no choice. This is a great time to take advantage of this for change and reset. But it's not easy work. And if there's something that I believe Andreea, Marc, and Rob can agree with, it's not as sexy as you might think, right? To move change requires a great deal of courage. It requires getting yourself up and learning quickly. And that is why it's important for all of us to be realistic that if we want something like this, we need to know whether that it is about us. Because if it's about our value system, if it's about something we care about, we will put in the hard work. We will definitely do our best. So this is an invitation after this call. Look at the SDGs, come back to that vision, because that is a global vision that we subscribe to and that will really make the world more livable, especially in the context of a pandemic. See what you care about, and then choose the one that you really care about, and then move people in this direction, regardless whether the people on the left or right are doing that with you, right? You go there, push, and then other people will be, wait, where did he go? Whoa, what's there? What did he create? Oh my God, I want to be part of it. That's how you create momentum. That's how you create excitement, living in that future already. Like Marc said, you live in the future, then people will follow through immediately. So I think that's the best place to start. That being said, I would love to end by giving each and every one of you, yes, Andreea, I see you already got activated, and I'm happy. I want to give you, each and every one of you, the chance to share some final thoughts with our audience and regarding today's subject. So this time, Andreea, we'll start from you, then pass to Rob, and then give Marc the final word. Andreea, please.
Very much. I just wanted to add to your call to action, the Recycling Patrol call to action, because as I told you, in 2020, we started this platform in order to search for particular suggestions from all the members of communities of the small changes that we are doing to improve our good life and our ecological environment and environmental and safe and healthy life. So if you have stories and if you have examples, please share with us, because we are going to promote them on our platform, and we are going to help other people from other communities to know about them. So please stay with us, come along the project, sustain the project, and share your ideas, because we are willing to change the lives of the communities. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Andreea, how can people find you on Facebook, or how exactly can they search for you online?
Patrula de Reciclare, the Facebook page is Patrula de Reciclare, and the site is patruladereciclare.ro.
Awesome. We will leave the links in the comments so that you can check them out yourself. And I hope awesome. And I hope people will tune in and connect with you guys. I'm pretty sure there are some examples we can find from out there.
Very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Andreea.
Let's make the world a better home for all of us.
Yes, beautiful. A better home indeed. Rob, what would be your final thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, first, I would like to add something to the last question which was asked, because yes, the future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. The question was about the dialogue with the city and the civil sectors, the citizens, and the officials, the administrations, and the politicians. So a great example to look at is Estonia and even better, Taiwan. How they have a digital minister. The only thing they're responsible for is to engage in a dialogue with the population, to bring up the bring up the proposals, to collect the proposals, to put them into decision proposals, and then make a decision. And it becomes very transparent. So also here, digitalization can be a great enabler, because you cannot drag things out and you cannot hide things, and there's lobbyists left and right. So there's a very clear, transparent dialogue going on between the citizens and the officials of cities and national governments. So I just wanted to add that. I think that's something which is urgently needed in the old Europe. We quickly have to catch up in that regard. So what I would like to say, famous last words from my end, is think about you as a citizen, how you can act out, what you can do in your community where you live, to live what's already within you, where you want to contribute to, whether that's riding your bike or volunteering in some capacity, or also very deliberately, consciously supporting your local governments. And if you're a business owner, or if you work for a company, if you're in the private sector, then do the same there, like in their livelihoods. Do the same there. If you if you are in politics, be a driving force. If you're in an NGO, be a driving force there. So just embody it. It has to do with embodying. You don't just take your corporate suit off, or your work suit off, and then you become your private person. No, you're one. So you're a citizen as well as a business owner or government official or NGO. So be integral to yourself. Hold yourself to the standard. And thank you for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Rob. I totally agree. I want you to know that no one is too small. If you think you're too small or you can't do it alone, try sleeping in a room with a mosquito, just one mosquito. It's very hard to do. And I want you to know that each of us have the opportunity to make a difference, to impact first and foremost our lives and get us into a place where we need to be to move forward. And then we'll be in a place to help and empower other people. Most of you are here because you're already involved in governments. You want to see better infrastructure. You want to see better urbanization because you either can't currently see the future you want to live in, or you're missing certain basic needs in your city, your community, that aren't being provided. And so I don't want to preach to the choir or sing to the choir, because I believe you're already on this right path in the direction where we need to go. There are billions of people who are in developing countries and who are numb or desensitized. Some of them, especially in the United States, are zombies. They do not see their world around them. They're led by someone else. They're waiting for the future to happen to them. And when the future doesn't happen to them, they can complain about it or die, because there's not much other than to change their life and to become an active crew member on Spaceship Earth that will help us to get our planet become a homo symbiotic. So become, instead of homo sapiens, a homo symbios, and become an integral part of our symbiotic Earth. I wish to leave you with one last message, as I hope that together we can empower billions of people to live an adaptive lifestyle within our planetary, adaptive lifestyle of health and sustainability within our planetary boundaries, because that will really get us to the resilient, desirable futures where we want to go. I thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Very much. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you again, Rob. Thank you, Andrea, for joining in this beautiful conversation. Thank you for everybody tuning in. Before we set off, I invite our people who are in the live stream to leave their final comments on some thoughts or the ideas that stayed with them the most. I, for one, would love to quote a few. First of all, as Andreea was saying, that it all starts with education and communication and how we build respect and we regain the respect of people that are important in moments like these, but are important in general. And that is the teacher, that is the parent, and all of the authority figures that are there to serve us. This has to go both ways. They have to do what they to show that respect and to be the example, and as well we have to do the same. I believe for Rob, I wanted to congratulate and thank you for the reminder of how simply it is that we just look at our company, we look at the SDGs, and we simply start from there and we build from that particular vision. And as you said, pain and vision, they are kind of the driving forces in certain moments, and if we're feeling that pain, it's hopefully that will lead to the better vision that we change. And as Marc was saying quite often, this idea of being the crew member of Spaceship Earth is a tough job. It requires a bit of education. It requires waking up from old habits and understanding that there is a great deal of interconnectivity with the people around us. And just wanted to say, I mean, also to share with you guys the comment from Ada, because she had her question and she wanted to send us a few kind words. Congrats for organizing this debate. We will share these points of view with our Patrula de Reciclare community. Very good food for thought and action. And that is true. I am very happy that we are activating as much as we can with our efforts, what we can. Nobody's too small to make a difference. And I hope this is what inspires you to do good this week. Keep in touch with the Urban Talks, because we're going to have another call on Wednesday. And of course, 2 more coming next week. We are hell-bent on giving you access to inspiration, ideas, and people with whom you can make a difference. So I invite you to look at these opportunities, not just a time for you to hear great ideas. Look at these people, find them, connect with them. And if there's something you want to build together with them, want to contribute to the projects that they're already engaged in, this is the best opportunity for you to do so. Have a great week, all of you ahead of you, and hope that we will see you again in our future live stream. All the best.
Thank you. It's been an honor, gentlemen, and thank you for all the audience. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.